Good morning and hello and welcome to the Amenity Forum updating event. My name is Georgina Mellor from a company called Purple Monster. We're based in Warwick and we are in our studio today. We're delighted to produce and host this virtual event for you. We have a team of technicians in the control room making sure that we look and sound great so that you can hear and see everything beautifully today. So you may hear me talking to them on occasion. We are live, so forgive me if I slip up or anything does go wrong, but of course this is what we do day in, day out, so we're hoping to give you a really great event today. So yes, as you can see, we're running the session differently. So not only is it virtual, but also visually. And we want to get your engagement. We really want to make a difference listening to you today and hearing what you have to say about the Amenity Forum. So because we're keen to hear from you, our audience, there are going to be multiple ways in which you can comment and share feedback and ask questions throughout the 90-minute session. So I'd like to kick us off having a little go right now so that you're prepared and in the vibe and ready to go. So if we start by simply using the chat function on Zoom, I'm sure you've used this many times before, so you can just type your name and let us know where you're dialing in from. So very simple, if I was typing in, I'd say my name is George and I'm in Warwick. And then I'm hoping I can lift my head and look at my monitor above and I can see some names and some locations. So if you've not already typed in your name and your location, please do so now. So great, I can see you've got Mark in Lincoln. Hello, Mark. Richard Stowe in Doncaster. Oh, they're moving nice and quickly now. Laura from Swansea, or Chris, sorry, from Swansea. Jackie, I can't say where you're from, Jackie. It sounds lovely. My name is James and I'm dialing in from Sheffield. Simon from Cornwall. Fantastic, everybody. This is exactly what we want to do. We want you to use that chat function and really sort of engage with us and then bring us all together as one team. So there's another way that we can get your feedback today, and that is using something called Mentimeter, okay? So I'd like to have a little go at that as well. So this is our next interactive moment, okay? You're going to need your mobile phone for this, please. So hopefully you've got them to hand. If you get them ready, and you'll now see a QR code at the bottom of the screen. If you can scan that code, it will take you to mentimeter.com. And there is a question there for you to answer. So we'll give you a bit of time. These tech things can take a little minute or two. So if you just scan your phone using that QR code, and you should see that Menti question. The question is, what do you value most about the Amenity Forum? Okay? So I will hopefully see some of those coming up again on my monitor. So while you answer that question, I am delighted to introduce Ian Graham, Chairman of Amenity Forum. Hello, Ian.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Me too.
But I'd like to ask you that question, Ian. What do you value most?
It's an information platform. We're a forum, we're a group of people. We've got common interests, and I think the collective power of our voice is really what's important to me. It's what was important as a member, we're a member in the organisation within which I work. Mm-hmm. It's always nice to spend time and share ideas with people who understand what it is you're concerned about and talking about. So yeah, that's the value for me. It's a community, and we have a voice.
Brilliant. And we want to hear those voices from everyone today. So we have some answers in, so this is great. Ian, anything you want to read out up there? Can you see that? We've got listening to, oh, there we go, thank you.
Oh, we can read it now.
Yeah, listening to other
up-to-date information.
Yeah.
That's a key priority of ours in the forum, to make sure that we keep our members updated. Someone's agreeing with me there, saying it's a community. It is, very much so, and has been for a very long time. Information is a word that we're seeing multiple times there across a number of different comments. Guidance, that's another thing that we're heavy on, industry information. So there's a theme here, isn't there, George? We can see that people are looking for information, advice, knowledge, and I think that's what we're effective with.
Great, and hopefully today it's an update event, so hopefully people will go away with a lot of new information.
That's what it's always been about.
Absolutely. Sure. So now I'm going to hand over to you for you to do your introduction. So over to Ian. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have an agenda slide that we can look at. So I'm going to open up with a talk about the NAP, which we've obviously been waiting for a long time. So a little bit of review and reaction, not too heavy. Followed by Rob Gigg from HSE. He's one of the pesticide enforcement officers, and as an industry, we've been very aware that we've been under scrutiny from a new regime, which is, I think, very positive. Rob will be reporting on his findings. Then Jim Croxton is going to be talking. Jim is, of course, a member of the board, and so Jim will be sharing his thoughts on the Amenity Forum. Then we've got our panel discussion, which will be an opportunity for the audience to ask their questions. So I would encourage you to have a think about what it might be that you'd like to ask. Clearly, our predominant subject matter today is that of IPM, Integrated Pesticide Management. So it might well be that your questions are related to that subject, but we'll try and answer any questions that you may have. Strategies, Mark Diath is going to talk from Origin Amenity Solutions about IPM strategies, so Mark will always be very interesting, very technically proficient. We've got Ed Lewis from Railscape. He's got some really interesting new technology that he's going to be talking about. And then we have the Amenity Review, Karina Urquhart from Basis. The Amenity Review is something that's been taking place within Basis. Karina very firmly believes that Basis has a great deal to offer our sector. I personally agree, and I think she's the right person to deliver it going forward. That review is one of the first components of the process of making change. So, as George has said, we are moving to a new format. Previously, as many of you will know, we used to do physical events up and down the country, typically 5 or 6. They were quite difficult to organise, and certainly in recent times, it's become more difficult for people to travel and to find time. So we've moved to this online format. I hope that you enjoy it. And my great belief is that we can reach far more people as a consequence of having a format that people can join live, but also people can watch after the event. I think that's important because we are a broad sector. There are lots of elements, there are lots of different organisations within membership and within the sector that we would like to serve as best we can in terms of our updating events. So this new format for me is quite important. It gives us greater reach. It allows us to focus on subsectors, which is something I've talked about before. I think that probably within the forum we've got the capacity to form subsectors where people with some common interests can speak to one another and make use of this community that we share. And operate as a collective, which I think will be valuable, and that's certainly one of my aims in the coming months for us to try and build on that. So, without further ado, if I can have my first slide, team, that'd be great, and we can have a quick look at this summary of the NAP. So, 3 objectives really came out of the NAP. Let's have a look at those. The first one being to encourage uptake of integrated pest management. Integrated techniques have been talked about for a very long time now, and I think we can all acknowledge that it's important that we consider integrated management techniques. The game has moved on considerably, and we now have technologies and systems and ideas that weren't available to us 20 years ago when I first started hearing about the subject. So I think that as a sector, we're ready. I think we're engaging with that. So let's encourage one another, and let's encourage those in our sector that don't currently take part in the forum activities, because it undoubtedly will be our future. Targeting, so setting clear targets and measures to monitor use of pesticides. So I think it's fair to say that pesticide use has been a largely not unregulated, but we've not been challenged as practitioners. There's nobody really asking questions about what we're doing. We've been self-governing to a degree. So I think having clear targets and measures to monitor use of pesticides is a positive thing, and obviously record keeping is something that we've been required to do for a long time. But I think that's a key element that we'll look at. Strengthening compliance to ensure safety and better environmental outcomes. Clearly, we're all working with the environment here. That's the nature of our work. And I think that it's really important that we demonstrate that our commitment to those environmental outcomes is as strong as it's ever been. So if I can move to the next slide. So encouraging uptake of integrated pest management, we've got a reference guide that has been recently authored in association with Parks for London. This is a project that has been ongoing for a number of months. It's now been published, so I would encourage you to have a look at that document. It's been, like I say, co-authored with ourselves and Parks for London, so there's a lot of useful information in there. So that's a great starting point if you'd like to learn a little more about integrated weed management. Next slide, please. Okay, so objectives, targets. So FERA have been and are currently using their, sorry, I'm just trying to read the slide, it's actually very small. But FERA have been gathering information about the use of herbicides, both how they're applied, in what circumstances, by whom, and I think it's to try and deliver a far broader understanding of the current consumption of herbicides and how we might change the way that we're using them going forward. So some of you will have been approached by FERA directly or through other organisations asking that you fill in that form in order that we can try and build that database. That's really important, and if you have the opportunity to do so, I'd really encourage you to take that opportunity and help with that project. Final slide, please. Okay, so strengthening compliance to ensure safety and better environmental outcomes. So OCR registration, I think that most people will be familiar with this, but then I've been saying that for some years now. OCR is an important part of this same process of trying to understand the use of pesticides. So if you're a user, a supplier, a manufacturer, then you ought by now to have registered, and that registration process may well lead to an inspection of your facilities in order that the DEFRA can convince themselves that we've got good controls of the products that we use. I think the uptake on OCR has probably still been lower than we would like. So that awareness of the need to register is something that I would ask you to share with your colleagues, because I think probably it's fair to say that there are still a lot of unregistered organisations. So there's still an opportunity to do so. And of course, when we hear from the enforcement team, we'll hear a little bit more about that too. So that concludes my brief overview of the National Action Plan. I think that we waited so long for it that we probably anticipated that there might be some really actionable items within it. I think it's, to a degree, it's quite notional. Some of the actions within it, I think there are 18 in total, are quite difficult to measure and they're a bit open-ended. But I think that in principle, the content is good. But what I would close by saying is that as an industry and as component parts of that industry, it's our responsibility too to look forward and ensure that the future of our operations are secure, because we're looking after our own future and the future of those that follow us. So I'll conclude there and hand back to you, George.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you. So by all means, if you've got any thoughts or comments that you'd like to share regarding anything that Ian just said, please do use that chat function. And Kate can comment or share any information she may have, or we can certainly get back to you if you've got any important questions. So now I'd like to move on to our next speaker. I need to let you know that they'll be staying online to answer any questions you do have. So we'd like you to use Menti to submit your questions for that particular speaker. So I'm going to put that QR code up on the screen again. And now I'm going to welcome Robert Gigg, a pesticide enforcement officer. Hello, Robert.
Hello there. Trust you can all hear me and I'm coming through all right.
We can absolutely hear you. Fantastic. Robert, when you're ready, it's all yours.
Great stuff. Okay. I'm here today on behalf of the Health and Safety Executive and the Chemicals Regulations Division to talk to you about the enforcement of plant protection products from the point of view of a pesticide enforcement officer. Next slide, please. So PEO visits, where have we been and what they entail? So we started off with those at the top of the supply chain, those involved in the storage and distribution of PPPs, but have then since moved on to end users such as local authorities, contractors, those involved in horticulture and agriculture. So we check for the duties placed on duty holders under the specific regulations. Our aim is for sustained compliance, and there's a range of actions we can take to change that, achieve that, sorry. And then I've just included a QR code there that'll take you to a HSE page that'll detail a bit more about what to expect from a PEO visit. But generally, we try to set up a visit by appointment. And then when we're on site, we check your spray records, what sort of is that you record in, your certificates for training to see if they match up with your application equipment. We'll check the bund of the store and its integrity, and we'll also then check your PPPs in the store to make sure that they are authorized for storage and use. Next slide, please. So this is, again, just another link to the OCR registration page, if you've not already done, but I imagine, like was said, many of you probably already are registered. So if you know of anyone that isn't, just continue to bang the drum, I guess. Next slide, please. So this is just a breakdown of our visit figures, of where we, our visit plans rather, of where we plan to go throughout the year. So in the summer months, April to September, October time, we visit local authorities, contractors, other amenity users, and those horticulturists. And then over the winter months, we try to visit mainly agricultural establishments and sites, so that we're not like more of a burden when they're actively out in the field spraying. Although this is not like a hard and fast rule, we will go to an agricultural site over the summer months and a local authority in the winter, for example. Next slide, please. So this is the breakdown of our visits so far. As you can see, we've done 93 visits that have resulted in a range of enforcement actions. Most common there is the letter. This is a letter with actions, and this is us asking you to do something and then requiring evidence that you've done it, usually over an agreed time frame. You can see there we've got 8 enforcement notices issued. So from 93 visits, we've issued 8 notices rather. So we're not just raining down notices on anyone. And then we've also issued 38 pieces of verbal advice, and this is for cases where there's just minor non-compliance, something that's easy to rectify, something that could be sorted out on the day. For example, ensuring that the pesticide store has the relevant signage on the front, that being the general danger and the no smoking or no naked flame signs. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick note on what we expect for mobile stores. This is stores in or on vehicles or spraying equipment. We expect these to be stocked from a permanently fixed store and then used for periods for less than 24 hours straight. However, we do appreciate that sometimes you will go over this 24-hour period. So note that there's slightly higher standards for fixed stores than mobile stores. Then a note on your just general health and safety. Should never carry a pesticide in the cab of a vehicle. Always ensure that you've got like a bulkhead that separates the load compartment from the driving area, or you can use one of these chemical containers that are sort of pictured on the right there. And then we'd also expect there to be some sort of drip tray for any fill-in operations, suitable first aid, eye wash and spill kit provisions. And then just to be aware, if you park your store, you should park it in a place where if there was an unwanted release, it would not end up in like the water course or a drain or something like that. So that's just something to be aware of. Next slide, please. So I'm going to spend a couple of slides talking about the things that we enforce upon. This is our most enforced upon issue. This is the storage and potential use of unauthorized products. I've included a link here to the HSE's pesticide database. And so what we suggest is at the start of every year before the spraying season commences, go through your store and like note down the map numbers of the things that you've got that are actually in your store, and then run them through this database. And hopefully that should furnish you with enough information about those products, when it is that the authorization ends, how long you've got to use it, and that sort of thing. And if you do come across anything that you do have which is out of authorization, we expect it to be in some sort of quarantine zone so that it's away and not likely to be used whilst it's waiting for collection to be disposed of. Next slide, please. This is the bund capacity. This is another common issue we see. So your bund capacity must be 110% of your peak requirements. This is different to other chemicals regulations where they're 110% of your largest container. This is 100% of everything you own. So bear in mind your peak requirements. So if any of these pictures do look alarmingly familiar, it may be a simple case of removing from the pesticide store anything that doesn't necessarily need to be stored in there to free up a bit of space. And another thing we suggest then is also writing somewhere large and visible on your store the max capacity of it, so you've got like a good reference of something to not exceed. Next slide, please. Just a quick note on fire resistance. If you have a pesticide store, it should be resistant to fire for up to 30 minutes and should not be stored next to any sort of flammables in the forms of wood, bales, hay, that sort of thing. So if you do have a plastic pesticide store, or you know someone that does, this is going to be you'll want to have to do something about that because they're not fit for purpose effectively. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, cheers. So this is just a note on spray records. So we expect these should be kept for 3 years. And we always advise that you note down the PPP's full name and map number because the map number is tied to the formulation and will provide any information. If you have a complaint that comes in, using the map number will allow us to see exactly what it was that was sprayed and any sort of safety concerns that go along with that. Again, also record the application time and date, the dosage, enough specific geographic location details that you know down the line where it was that was sprayed, and then of course what it was that you were spraying. And there's just a link there to the code of practice for end users that contains spray records that you may wish to use. Next slide, please. Just a word on certifications. This is another thing we check when we come on site to ensure that the operator has the relevant qualification for the application method that they're using. And obviously, since 2013, there have been more, there's a sort of broader scope of things out there. So if your qualification is post 2013, we'll look a bit more in detail at what it actually entails. And then just a note on under supervision, we've come to realize is a bit of a flexible term and it's doing some heavy lifting. What actual under supervision means is under the direct personal supervision of the person who holds the certificate of that training, and they should be overseeing all aspects of the job. That includes the measuring out, the filling up, the applying, and then the washing down afterwards to ensure that the intended target is being sprayed and that there's no overspray or drift. Next slide, please. Pre-mixing PPPs, you should only be mixing enough for the day or for the job at hand. Obviously, we do appreciate that the weather changes and storage is sometimes a necessity. So that if you do store something you've mixed up, please ensure that it's labeled so you can identify what it is, stored securely, and then used promptly. You shouldn't be doing what this person very diligently done here, and that was fill up a whole bunch, pre-mix a whole bunch of a year's worth of pesticides and then just leave it in an area with no bund and no kind of carpet. So you should only be mixing up enough for the job at hand. Next slide, please. And then just a quick note on the inspection of application equipment. This does not apply to knapsacks. A good rule of thumb would be if it has a motor or it has more than 2 wheels, the chances are that it will need an NSTS testing once before it reaches the age of 5, and then the boom width will determine the frequency of testing after that. So I've just got 2 pictures here and then 2 pictures on my next slide of the different ranges of things that will need NSTS testing. So there you are. So there's quite a broad scope of things which will need testing. And then finally, on my last slide, I've got just best practice about spill kits. We suggest a plastic bin like there's 2 pictured here. because then they can contain your absorbent materials, your heavy duty bags, your zip ties, and a copy of the PPE. And then once you've dealt with any spillages, this then can act as it can house the hazardous and soiled material, so you know there's no likelihood of a secondary leak or something like that. And the good thing about these is they're sort of cheap and readily replaceable. And then just a note: if you are traveling out and about, again, to ensure that you do bring an adequately sized spill kit with you as well, along with first aid and eye wash provisions. Next slide, please. So this is just some details then on how to report to HSE any sort of misuse that you may come across as you're traveling around. And if you can report that to us, the more reports that we get, it'll help us then focus in on what it is we should be looking at, and hopefully advise us on sort of things that we may have overlooked or missed. So the only thing that remains to say is thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity today to speak before you. And I hope I've sort of alleviated some fears or some of the mysticism that surrounds a pesticide enforcement officer visit. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. And we do have some questions for you, and just about 4 or 5 minutes to see if you can answer any of those. So that would be fantastic. I'm just going to lift my head. We've got a great question here. How can we ensure our clients are registered and looking for registered contractors? Sort of two questions in one.
So you could always bring it up yourself, I guess. If you know, if you have a good relationship with these, then and you know of people that aren't registered, then you could sort of make it a selling point in and of yourself that you know that we are registered, and that could be a way to do it. Another way is so what was it? What was the question, sorry?
How can we ensure our clients are registered, and then also that they're looking for registered contractors?
So once you've registered, you will get an email back from DEFRA saying thank you for, like an auto-generated thank you for registering email. So that could be something that you could ask to see. And there's no harm in registering more than once, because like I say, the only thing you get back is a auto-generated email. So if you're not sure that someone's registered, then you can either ask them to register again, provide evidence of their registration. What evidence? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, next question.
Yep.
What efforts are the HSE taking to identify and audit organisations that have not registered?
So the registration belongs to DEFRA. So DEFRA owns the list of people that are registered and not. Well, they own the list of people that are registered. There isn't a list of people that aren't registered. So which at the minute, we're just trying to make sure that enough people know about the OCR registration, because from what I've discovered on the ground is DEFRA, it was not and has not been massively widely publicized. So at the minute, we're just, when we visit, we ensure that people we do visit are registered. And if they're not, then we get them to register. But usually we try to go to a range of people that are and aren't registered, because at the end of the day, we don't know if someone isn't registered, and we don't know. So we don't know who we don't know isn't registered. If you know what, if that's clear.
Thanks very much, Robert, indeed. And so we'll say goodbye to you. Please stay online and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much. See you now. Bye-bye. We've got some videos for you as well today. So we've got some really good testimonials to share. And the first one is from Richard Stowe, Managing Director of Weed Free, a member of the board and the main sponsor for this event today. So over to the video.
My name is Richard Stowe, Managing Director of Weed Free Limited. Weed Free Limited is a proud member of the Amenity Forum. The Amenity Forum is a community of like-minded professionals dedicated to best practice within our sector. The Amenity Forum brings together industry experts from across the sector, including contractors, suppliers, local authorities, regulators, and a host of other interested parties. This cross-section offers a huge wealth of experience and knowledge which benefits every member. If you don't know the answer, you can bet another member of the forum will be able to help. Membership of the Amenity Forum enhances our professional credibility. Membership to Weedfree means best practice and signals our commitment to quality, which is ultimately what our customers are looking for in their suppliers. The Amenity Forum also provides a direct link to government decision makers through our connections with CRD and DEFRA. These connections ensure that our voice and the voice of the sector is heard and considered when shaping future policies. This also allows members to stay ahead of regulatory changes whilst contributing meaningfully to the direction of the sector. Above all, the Amenity Forum is a passionate community that cares about the amenity spaces, urban environments, and the countryside that surrounds us. Being part of this network reflects our shared values and commitment to best practice and the delivery of safe, sustainable services within the amenity sector. Weedfree Limited has been a member of the Amenity Forum since it was established, and I would encourage any interested party to become a member and grow the forum, our influence, and our voice. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. It's Jim Croxton, CEO of Bigger and board member of the Amenity Forum. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, George. Morning, everybody.
Great. Well, we can hear you, so off you go in your own time.
Thanks very much. Lovely to follow fellow board member Richard Stowe there. I've actually got a picture of Richard later on in this presentation. See if you can spot the subtle difference between when the photo was taken and how he's presenting himself today. Yeah, I'm the Chief Executive of Bigger, the Golf Greenkeepers Association. Been on the board for a number of years, and very happy to spend a few minutes today talking about the forum itself and kind of the way it's run and what we're trying to achieve. So next slide, please. I think the key thing is about what the forum actually does, what it stands for. This is a really important slide. The forum, as Chairman said earlier on, is a very broad church. We're a very, very broad sector. And it's key that everybody kind of understands what the forum is, and I guess even what the forum isn't. And so I think particularly the first two lines on this slide are really key about the forum's kind of main purposes. And I always think, sitting around the boardroom table, that it's trying to find a united voice for this very broad and very diverse sector. There's a huge difference between what my members do out on the golf courses with what many other members of the sector do, but there are some really key themes within that, particularly in our conversations with regulators, where we need a strong voice and a very united voice. And it's sometimes challenging to get a united voice from such a diverse sector, but I think hopefully we tread that fine line pretty well. And then particularly following the eventual release of the NAP and its sort of the importance it places on encouraging IPM, I think our best practice guides, about which a little later, are also really crucial. We've got to encourage this sector to engage with best practice so that we can demonstrate to those regulators that we are working in general along IPM lines. Obviously, to most of you that do engage the sector very regularly, the networking and the awareness are also pretty important. Next slide, please. Key to all of the forum's activity is communication, both internally and externally. We've put a real focus on that external communication. The chairman is doing an excellent job, and we'll talk a little bit about some of his activities in a future slide, but really focusing on that external communication, in particular, getting out and about and meeting people that we as a forum need to communicate with. I think where there's room for us to improve remains internal communication. We have got some good examples on this slide. If you look at our kind of news pages over there to the left, we do some pretty good stuff, but we are dependent on information coming in from the members and from the industry so that we can disseminate that out. And we tend to get little flurries and spurges whenever Kate puts a request out for things to talk about, but it can go very, very quiet. I'm as guilty as the next person. But it is fascinating for us all, particularly as board members, to understand what's going on out in the field, as it were. So please, anybody who's on this call or watching it later, please, if you've got information you think would be valuable to us as a forum that we can communicate out, or that just we can use ourselves, so that we've got constant sort of streams of news, that would be really, really valuable. Keep an eye on our social media feeds as well. Next slide. I said before that I think our voice is probably the thing that the majority of members value the most, alongside the excellent networking opportunities. And this is something that the chairman in particular over this last year or so has really tried to focus on: establishing, maintaining really good relations with all of the organisations and departments listed on the screen and others. The forum is a big deal to us. It can be seen as a smallish sector in a more general sense. So we have to have a loud voice and we have to have a strong voice. And the chairman's doing a really good job of that. But we're always looking for opportunities to find the right people within the right departments, within the right organisations. It's great to have some of these organisations represented today on this webinar. But if anybody out there can help us to open even more doors, particularly in the departments, in the various governments and executives that make the key decisions, that will be really useful. Feed that into Kate or to the chairman, and we'll do our very best to knock on those doors and open them. But I'm really proud of the work that's been going on in the last few years, in particular, to really try and drive some of those relationships, probably initially established by John Moverley, taken on by Peter Corbett, and now Ian really kind of driving into those. He's not shy in coming forward, our chairman, and is proving hugely valuable in this area. Next slide. As mentioned earlier, the best practice is probably one of our greatest assets. We've got some fantastic guides within our website that members can access. And with this new importance placed on IPM, I think many of us were hoping the NAP would have gone further, but it's gone as far as it has, and it's what we have to deal with. But our best practice and our insistence, or our urging of our members to take this up, so that our standards and things are taken up more widely, we're looking at something for our own sector in this phase, I think are going to be really important to us as we try and maintain good regulation. And I think this kind of importance of best practice really helps us in those conversations with regulators. When Ian is in those conversations and when we're more broadly with them, our best chance, I think, of getting sensible regulation and the right regulation for our sector is in us prioritising best practice and proliferating that as widely as we possibly can. We have some pretty comprehensive guidance, practice guidance, but we can always do more. So anybody that has any examples of this for their own particular sectors, however niche, please do pass those on to us so that we can build our own library and the ability to influence further. One thing I would highlight is the Immunity Sprayer Operator of the Year, our annual opportunity to champion great practice across our industry. I'm very pleased to see that the last 2 or 3 winners, we've had quite a few golf greenkeepers have come through in that, and always a proud moment for me, but it is open to the whole sector. And in fact, spraying is only a very small part of what many of my members do. So we're perhaps punching above our weight a little bit in this area. So please get involved in this and feel free to try and knock us greenkeepers off our perch on that. It's soon to launch. Next slide. Please, the bits we all enjoy, the fun bit. I'm even enjoying this, and I thought webinars were something that we did in 2020, but this has been great so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it. But there's nothing that can replace our opportunity when we do get together. So really looking forward to our conference in October. Last year's was superb. But the forum does provide, at our regular forum get-togethers and the key events we do, a really good networking opportunity amongst each other, forum members, and of course amongst the sort of supply chain that we work with. It's our wish to do as much of that as we possibly can. If anybody has any ideas for further events, then please do let us know. Final slide, please. So both Richard and myself have been introduced as board members. The chairman Obviously on the board, Ian, who was with us from the start of this call. There we are. We're a motley crew. I think you'll recognise a couple of differences between how people look on their photos and how they look now. Not totally certain when Will Kay's photo is from, but I'm slightly surprised it's in colour. And Richard, I like the beard, Richard, so you keep doing you. We are, I think, reasonably representative of the sector. We have representatives from across the sort of various niches within it there. But we are just 6 people doing our best. We need as much information from the rest of the membership as we can to make sure that we continue to head in the right direction, led manfully by our chairman, Ian. So please engage with us either at events or through our new email addresses, which I'm sure Kate can provide you with. And mentioning Kate, on the right of the screen there, let's be truthful about all this. The hard work is generally done by Kate Hopkins, who does a superb job in running all of our administration, finance and events, etc. She's having a very calm day today, sitting behind the scenes in the production studio. But she is the driving force behind what we do. So please engage with Kate as much as you possibly can. She's a critical factor of our forum. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Please now back to the studio. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Jim. And yes, I can certainly vouch for the work that Kate has put into this event. So I second that, absolutely. Thanks very much, Jim. We'll see you later. So now I'm going to move on to another video that we have. It's another testimonial, and this one is regarding membership benefits, and it's from Ruth Bailey.
Hi everyone, my name's Ruth Bailey from the Agricultural Engineers Association. The AEA are the trade association for the supply of and manufacture of all equipment and machinery related to maintaining green spaces, amenity, leisure facilities and agriculture. So we're talking about anything from a combine harvester through to a brush cutter and all the ride-on mowers in between. Of course, we're bringing new innovations, new technology, new ideas to the marketplace. You know, we're playing a huge role in providing solutions towards solving the big issues of the day. We've got climate change, environmental conservation, sustainability. We all know this, but we alone can't do that. We have to work with others hand in hand as professionals and as the public to ensure that these challenges are met and that we live in a far safer place. We need to do more with less now. We need to nurture our planet. It's all part of a big puzzle that all the professionals are working towards. Being part of the Amenity Forum is essential for us. The Amenity Forum provide the rest of the pieces for that huge puzzle that brings ideas together. It's an exchange of information between professional people, between experts, people who are working with the science, with the evidence, with the technology, people who are working in the functions and the implementation and the practicalities of everyday life, of weed control and pest management. So this is incredibly valuable to us as we're developing our products and being part of that, as I called it, that network of pieces that make our world a better place to be in. But more importantly, we see it as our understanding of our obligations. They're our legal responsibilities, our legal obligations. Here, the Amenity Forum has a direct line to government, and we are not only asking government the big questions, but we're actually helping them to provide the solutions. It's the consensus and the up-to-date thinking that's bringing best practice to life. And that's the guidance that we are looking for. We want up-to-date thinking. We want the latest and the most relevant, most up-to-date ideas. And we want guidance on best practice. We think it's a responsibility for everybody, and we all share those responsibilities. So the Immunity Forum is critical to everyone. Anyone using pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, other products in pest control and weed and disease control. But we're a huge sector. We've councils, contractors, horticulturalists, maintaining of sports facilities, anyone who's managing green spaces and is responsible to the public. So we need everyone involved. We want to keep these green spaces open. We want to keep these green spaces accessible. And more in the world we live in, they are so important for issues of mental health and our relationship with nature. So we're looking for members from everyone. It's open to all individuals. It's a voluntary scheme. And that voluntary self-monitoring, self-checking, self-regulation does actually show how responsible it can be, working with government, recognised with government. But it's all about everyone playing their part, as I say, in this big puzzle to demonstrate best practice and commitments to drive our standards up and promoting that best practice and best thinking across the industry. Thank you for today.
Great testimonial there. So next up, everyone, we have a panel discussion for you. We would like you to get those mobile phones out now and use that QR code to ask any questions you have of our panel. So to facilitate, we have Tom Arnold. Hello, Tom.
Hi, George.
Hi,
Morning.
Tom. Good morning. Let me introduce the panel. We've got Ed Stannard, Dan Jones, Chris Faulkner, and of course, Ian Graham live in the studio. So good morning to you all. That's great. We can see you. That's fantastic. So I'm going to hand over to Tom, and please do get those questions ready, everybody. Off we go.
Good morning, everyone. As George said, my name is Tom Arnold. I'm Director of the Immunity Forum, but also Chair of the UK Lawn Care Association. Welcome to the panel on integrated pest management or integrated weed management discussion today. So we are very fortunate with our expert panel today. We have three managing directors and one CEO. And I'd like to give a brief introduction to each of the guys before we start the question time. So first of all, Ed Stannard, CEO of Parks for London. Ed, could you just raise your hand? Yeah. Hi, Ed. So Parks for London have recently commissioned the Integrated Weed Management Guide and also recently published it. So I'm sure there's going to be some questions for them. Chris Faulkner, MD of Kirsten UK. Chris, could you raise your hand? So Kirsten provide a range of equipment as alternatives to herbicide use, including brushes, sweepers, and electric weed control. They've just held their own IPM conference and supported the work alongside Immunity Forum on the Parks for London Guide. We have also Dr. Dan Jones of Advanced Invasives. Dan, hi. Dan is also Honorary Research Associate at the Department of Bioscience, Swansea Uni. Dan has provided evidence that the House of Commons committees produced government reports and delivered best practice guidance for a wide range of stakeholders. He was also involved in the Cardiff trials on hard surface vegetation management. Last but not least, we have Ian Graham of Complete Weed Control. CWC are really the experts in the weed technology that has drastically reduced the volume of herbicide used for controlling weeds on hard surfaces. And there have also been recent advances in this technology, which Ian may well share with us today. Okay, let's go to some questions. And I'm going to share these amongst the panel. So any particular questions coming up? Let's have a look. So just okay, to kick off, first question, is IPM a practical practice to adopt within amenity spaces? Let me go to Ed Stannard first for that question. Ed, you okay with that?
Absolutely fine. And yeah, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. As touched on in the introduction, we have recently worked with the Amenity Forum and Kirsten to update and relaunch our integrated weed management reference guide and policy template and management plans as well. And the whole point of that is to try to encourage land managers to adopt a practical approach to integrated weed management in the public realm. Without guidance such as this, it is obviously more complicated. You need to have the three-pronged approach, which is about having the information and guidance to support the decisions that you make about what you're trying to apply in certain spaces, but also promoting the kind of the long-term evaluation and monitoring of such programs. Without such long-term monitoring and evaluation of what's being used, where, the efficacy of it, the costs of it, and lots of other angles, it is much harder to get that kind of that long-term sustainable approach implemented. So yes, it is a practical practice to adopt, but it does need some nuance. And we hope that the guidance we've produced with the Amenity Forum and Kirsten can help support that process.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Dan, have you got any other comments you could add to what Ed has said there?
I fully agree with what Ed said. I mean, certainly in parks and open spaces, I did the Cardiff trial a few years back. I also produced a similar report that's confidential for Torvine County Council. And certainly in parks, integrated pest management can work really well. It is more laborious. There are additional costs associated with it. But I think more broadly with amenity settings, i.e. outside agriculture, I think agriculture has a range of different methods that aren't necessarily suitable, particularly in roadside settings and things like that in urban areas. And I think from an amenity perspective, there does need to be a bit more of a focus in terms of infrastructure planning, not providing the habitats in the first instance for the weeds to grow. I've certainly talked to Kirsten on a number of occasions around detritus reduction. If you don't have the silt accumulation in gutters and things like that, you don't get the weeds growing there in the first place, which reduces the need for subsequent management measures, regardless of whether that's chemical, physical. And I think, sort of finally, when we do come to manage these weed populations, we've got to think about the economic and environmental sustainability of these. And we've also got to consider the practicality of them. Certain measures aren't going to be useful in certain settings. And I mean, Al Mason will be the first to say certain measures such as flamers are unsafe to use, impractical, and also environmentally damaging. The amount of carbon and other pollutants that they produce, regardless of whether they're based on herbicide, don't necessarily mean that those measures are going to be sustainable. And I think, ultimately, we absolutely do need better quality information to be making these decisions.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Ed. I think that leads nicely on to the next question, which has come up, which is how do you integrate mechanical methods into your IPM plan? And I think this is one for Chris, definitely, to lead on.
Yeah, I think the mechanical methods or the mainstays of the idea of integrated weed management are prevention, monitoring, or toleration. Actually, we ought to use the new words which have been produced. Toleration. Can we tolerate the weeds in the first place? Can we prevent them growing? Certainly, by sweeping the surface, I think Dan Jones mentioned that we certainly reduce the ability for those weeds to grow in the first place. So that mechanical approach has got to be to the forefront and comes before suppression or control. So by preventing the weeds growing, and that on hard surfaces undoubtedly means sweeping, we can then reduce the amount of suppression. And if we take chemicals to be one form of suppression or control after the event, then that will reduce the amount of chemicals. But it also reduces the amount of, say, Dan mentioned the flamer. hot water, the electricity, other control methods that are now available on the market. They're all reasonably high in carbon, but that carbon is obviously reduced by preventing. So that's the number one way to control your costs. And it's interesting that really a lot of organizations have dabbled really in a piecemeal bit of integrated weed management, but it's not until you actually roll out the whole thing does the synergies, leveraging the synergies, actually become then far more cost effective and reflect on savings to the local authority or the contractor looking after the area.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. So next question that's come up is, do you think clients, in particular local authorities, have an appetite for more expensive approaches with environmental benefits? Ian, you've just come on my screen. Would you like to answer that one?
Sure, yeah. I think it's true to say that local authorities do have that appetite. What they don't necessarily have is budget. So I think the important thing here is to find balance. And it's probably perceived that the forum is a group of people that are pro-herbicide and anti-alternatives. I don't think that's founded in any kind of truth at all, because as you can see, having Kirsten speak with us today demonstrates that within membership we've got people who represent all sorts of different industries. So the question is, how do you find that balance? And I think that there's been a degree of data collection in recent years that probably help us to establish what does and doesn't work. And as with anything, the answer is not black and white. There's certainly an area of grey that we have to navigate our way through. And the reality is that if you take a typical council or local authority landscape, they will have a great degree of variety in terms of the surfaces, the weed problems that they have. And so that balance comes from finding what's cost effective, what produces good results, what has a positive effect environmentally in the long term. So yes, I think the appetite's there, and we have to find a way as an industry to deliver to that appetite.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, the next question that's come up is that how do you balance aesthetic expectations with IPM principles? I think that's probably a great question for Ed. Ed, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Integrated weed management, integrated pest management doesn't begin when you're on site. It begins a long time before that. And so balancing aesthetic expectations also takes on, I guess, the deep-rooted, entrenched kind of community development to understand what the aesthetic expectations in certain spaces are, and then also working to potentially change the public perception of what is expected. Obviously, different amenity spaces, different landscape types have different expectations to them. And spaces need to be managed accordingly to the communities and the areas in which they serve. But yeah, it's challenging. But again, it takes time, and it takes that engagement work pre even going on site necessarily to start kind of understanding and sort of changing perceptions of what is aesthetically pleasing in a certain space.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. This is quite a good question, I think. Has the uptake of No Mow May and reduction in verge cutting helped or hindered IPM for municipal amenity bodies and contractors? Who would like to take that question? I think about No Mow May and reduction of verge cutting. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Very short one. I think that the idea of having an area for wildlife to grow right next door to main roads, to cars travelling at high speed, is not the ideal area, for example, to do that. And we ought to carefully consider what we're trying to achieve by not cutting the verges and creating habitats in that particular location. I think that is demonstrated all the way through integrated pest management, that we have to have more of a discussion and decide that have the pros and cons of this particular thing, and maybe the other side of the hedge would be a good place to have that rather than right against the highway. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Another good question. What low carbon methods are currently available for an integrated approach to hard surface weed control? Dan, I'm going to ask you to.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think this fits into the kind of the question regarding do primarily local government organisations have an appetite for reducing environmental impacts with respect to weed control, and I think they do, and I think they're particularly those organisations are in a really difficult position that they've got fewer and fewer funds available to fund infrastructure spending, detritus removal. This is a commonality with the councils that I've worked with in South Wales, and as a consequence of that, you've then got management becomes the essential process, and the management end user management processes, as we found with the Cardiff trial, are the most environmentally friendly, are based on the use of herbicides. So I think, although aspirationally we want to be looking at integrated pest management, it's a difficult one to square with organisations that their budgets are under pressure. And this is a conversation that I've had with Kirsten again, is that sustainability means actually addressing the problem before it becomes a problem, if you like. And if we're not doing that, we're always sort of playing catch up, either using herbicides or other measures to manage the weed populations once they've established. But fundamentally, that isn't the sustainable approach that we should be aiming for, certainly with respect to integrated pest management. So I mean, it's kind of a circular issue whereby we're looking for these low herbicide approaches, but the low herbicide approaches are critically dependent on organisations being able to spend prior to that weed population becoming a problem. And that's kind of the key issue with this. So certainly that's my take. And I mean, certainly in terms of the carbon emissions, environmental impacts, glyphosate, particularly using the weed-it machine that Complete Weed Control use, is by far the most sustainable that we've got for managing those larger weed populations once they've established.
Okay, so thanks, Dan. Another good question that's linked, I think, which is an urban environment where no pesticides are applied a realistic and sustainable proposition? And I'm going to ask that two people to answer that. So I'm going to kick off with Ian and then come to you, Chris, to comment on that.
So again, here we have another question that doesn't really have a black and white answer. I think we can probably point to the likes of Brighton, where we've seen policies with no herbicides, and we've seen as a consequence very high levels of weed growth in urban areas, which have certainly been a problem for many. Brighton have now moved to a policy of using herbicides again. So you could argue that might be perceived as an answer to the question. However, I think that like everything, it's that balance and it's about integration. So I think picking up on the point that Dan made, this isn't, and Ed in fact, this isn't just about what we do now, it's about how we think about our future. So the problem with having insufficient money to invest in potentially more expensive alternatives is also linked to the fact that we've got infrastructure that is very old in some places. We've got pavements that haven't been resurfaced for many years. We've got a lot of flagged paved areas where weed growth can be prolific. So until we start dealing with the source of the problem, we're always going to have to maintain the consequences. I think that with unlimited funds, absolutely, you could manage an urban space without herbicides. However, for a local authority to do so across its entirety would be, I think, very challenging currently.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think eating an elephant, I was told you have to do it one mouthful at a time. So it's the whole point of this thing is you haven't got to start with all guns blazing. You can start in small parts. I noticed on a local street recently there was a poster up from the local council that asking whether they wanted the street sprayed or not. It's rather a binary question. I would rather say, would you like us to sweep your street or not? So if we remove that detritus, again, this is the whole point of the start of the process of integrated pest management is trying to reduce what we have to do. So get away from this binary thing. Do you want us to spray or not? There are other alternatives. Let's start by sweeping. Even if we sweep 1% more than we're doing now, we've made progress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Another question has come up just related to the Weedit technology. How do we think this can really help and be part of IPM going forward? Well, that's definitely one for you, Ian, I believe.
Thanks.
Unfortunately not, Tom. We'll have to pass that over to someone else, unfortunately.
Yeah. Over to Ian.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so Weedit technology was developed and introduced into the UK in 1997, so it's a long time ago now. That initial launch was a machine that had relatively low tech, but was still very efficient and reduced herbicide consumption considerably. It was only in 2012 that glyphosate labels called for mandatory spot spraying, albeit that spot spraying wasn't really there's no definition being attached to spot spraying, so it's actually quite difficult to ascertain whether we're complying with label recommendations or not. But to answer the question specifically about technology, the Weedit technology has been used in agriculture considerably since those early days, and that's where the predominant use of the technology lies now. We in the UK are the only country that are using hard surface weed control through that same technology. And recent innovation has meant that we can identify weeds more accurately, but also very interestingly, we're able to measure how much herbicide we're using in a given area. So combining GPS tracking with monitoring of the data through the system as it's working allows the client and it allows us as contractors to see where are we using most product. And this really ties into that conversation we're having about targeting brushing techniques, for example. So if we know where we're using a lot of herbicide, that's going to be a pointer as to where we ought to be deploying brushing techniques. So there's as with anything these days, I only have to look at the studio and the team that are working with us today to make these visual presentations look as slick as they do. There's a great deal of advancement in all fields, and that technology, even the older technology, we estimate as a business probably saving somewhere in the region of 20,000 litres of glyphosate annually for our business, for our clients. But that is set to reduce further, and that can only be a good thing. So, watch this space.
Ian, thank you very much. We've run out of time now, so I'm going to pass back to George in the studio. Thank you. Thanks to all our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, and to all the panelists, of course. And yes, there you all are. We'll say goodbye to you now. Thank you very much. And thanks to those of you who added those questions and asked those questions there. Without you, there would be no panel. So fantastic. So now I'm going to move us on to another testimonial. This one is from Ian Barnett.
DLF have been a member of the Amenity Forum for many years now, and as an organisation we have found it incredibly beneficial for supporting best practice, as we share common ground. We breed and develop grass varieties as well as wildflowers, which are at the forefront of sustainable management practices, which play a vital part in integrated pest management plans. The Amenity Forum Conference is a fantastic place to learn from different industry colleagues, who all play a vital part in the amenity landscape. The openness of sharing ideas is second to none, which supports the networking that the conference provides. Personally, being a member of the forum has given me opportunities to be part of something bigger than my normal day-to-day working life. Through the networking opportunities, I have been part of the recent Plant Varieties and Seed Strategy workshop hosted by DEFRA earlier this year, from connections I have made through attending events. Knowing the Amenity Forum has a direct voice to government, This increases the awareness of our industry and problems and issues we may find and can be addressed in government departments. I believe that every business, organisation or association who is involved in amenity from production, supply or advising the sector should play a part in the Amenity Forum and become members. If the amenity industry unites through the Amenity Forum, we have a bigger voice and problems and issues can be addressed and supported by a very knowledgeable membership base.
Another fantastic testimonial there from Ian. Any comments on that?
Yeah, it's just really pleasing to hear people extracting value from what we've always believed as an organisation to be a valuable asset to those that become members.
Members, absolutely, fantastic. We're moving on now to the tech presentations. So for this, if you do have any comments or questions, do use that chat function with these sections here now. So now I'm going to welcome Mark Diath. He's from the Origin Amenity Solutions, former board member and long-time Amenity Forum supporter. So hello, Mark.
Hi, how are you, Jill?
I'm very well. And when you're ready, Mark, we'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, just about good morning, everyone. And I hope you'll find my presentation interesting. Slight technical hitch this morning. For some reason, after flawless yesterday presentation and everything was okay, my camera on my laptop seems to have died. So I'm doing this via a mobile phone. So hopefully I can see the slides quite well. Okay, so my presentation is on IPM strategies in golf and sports turf. I am the director of Origin Lawn Care, and for this particular thing, importantly, the plant protection product team lead for Origin. Next slide, please. So I'd like to say, first of all, what is IPM? Does everyone know what that is? So my definition is a sustainable approach combining cultural, nutritional, mechanical and chemical tools. Our goal, I think, is to try and minimize pest, weed and disease damage in a sustainable, in an environmental way, and ideally economic way. And the key principles of this is prevention, monitoring of that sort of pest or disease, thresholds, looking at what they would be for that particular disease, for example, the control, and then an evaluation afterwards to see whether we can improve upon that IPM program and strategy. Next slide, please. So why does IPM matter in golf and sports turf? Well, this can also apply in some of the areas to other sort of sectors that we've been speaking about today. But increased regulatory pressure, PP availability, everyone will know that PPPs are becoming harder to maintain registration. There are concerns about water quality as well within that. And certainly in some areas of the world, there does seem to be issues with resistant strains of weeds, pests and diseases. Another area is that obviously the NGO and the public and government are looking really for environmental expectations and sustainability targets. And really importantly now, and this seems to be an ever upward climb, is the consistency of playing surfaces of sports turf and golf courses year round. Want a playing surface as good in the winter as it would be in the summer. And that's a real challenge. Next slide, please. So how does an IPM framework for turf work? Well, start off with, we want to have a healthy sward, correct species choice. So we've got the right sort of grass species that will help on, let's say, on disease resistance. And then we want to be looking and monitoring regular scouting of, let's say, disease or a pest. And at Origin, we have disease modeling tools and weather forecasting equipment to help customers with that. We need to have thresholds set so that the action is based on the risk and not the presence, if you see what I mean, in terms that gone are the days when you could probably almost get away with everything because there was, let's say, for example, a curative fungicide. They're not really there now. So we have to look at a risk of that disease outbreaking. And then we have an intervention. So starting with cultural methods, hopefully with nutritional methods helping, and then at the end, if required, some sort of chemical intervention. Next slide, please. Now, to give some example, I'm just doing, if you like, a little mini case study here on mycodoculin patch. This is, you can see there, quite a debilitating disease in turf, and it's the most common disease in the UK. The casual agent is Mycodoculin navale, and it occurs in cool, damp weather, typically in autumn to spring, but in some years, like if we have wet summers, you can occur in the summer as well. Primarily driven by prolonged leaf wetness and shade and poor airflow. Next slide, please. So in terms of a strategy in there, we could look at example in a cultural way of improving airflow and drainage. So we could prune trees out that keeping shade and airflow low. We could get a really nice firm dry surface with top dressing materials, and we can remove dew by daily brushing or switching or using products. Or we have a product called Dew Cure, which actually stops dew forming on turf. And then nutrition, getting that nutrition right so that we're not putting excessive amounts of nitrogen on. Again, work that we've done over, well, probably 15 years now, a lot of it down at Sports Turf Research Institute, looking at the use of macro and micronutrients to ensure that the plant is resilient, it has strengthened cell walls. These are not fungicides. These are using nutrition to make the plant healthy to resist disease pressure. And then monitoring, as I said before, forecasts for infection, and making sure we understand when the risk periods are, and the use of preventive fungicides if necessary, and rotating those actives to ensure that we avoid disease resistance. Next slide, please. So here's some supporting tools. You'll see on the slide here something which we do, which is a forecasting for disease. So that is postcode specific to say the golf course or the football club or what have you, and it'll give you a daily update on the weather forecasting and how we see that likely to impact on disease pressures or stress pressures. In this particular case, we're looking at dollar spot is very prevalent this time of year, but we could do this in Mycodoculin as well, and that gives you an indication, and you can use that as a tool. Combined with the local weather data, and again, think about the agronomy support and advice you can get. And again, look at the resistant management tools online for fungicides. Next slide, please. So it brings me to the last couple of slides. Challenges and opportunities. Well, no doubt when you have a reduced chemical options, you have to be smarter in what you need to do. As I said before, long gone are the days when you could simply just put a curative fungicide on and expect to cure everything now. All fungicides are preventative. We don't have as many available now. So we have to look at an IPM strategy taking in the cultural, nutrition, and chemical methods. There's a pressure because of that to reduce inputs. But also we have this thing about playability expectations, in that a golfer would like to see the turf in tip-top form year-round. Premier League or even down at grassroots level, people want to be able to play on good surfaces throughout the year. And because of that, we need skilled practitioners to interpret the data that we're producing in terms of disease forecasting models and that sort of thing. And to be able to apply their knowledge to ensure that they get the best thing, and to then look at ways of improving on that. Next slide, please. So my final slide just looks quickly at the key aspects. So IPM is proactive. It's not reactive. It has to plan. It has to look at tools. It has to look at experiences on that particular site. It is data-driven. I think that's the most critical thing. It's data-driven so that you can use these tools to predict disease outbreaks. In this particular case, it might be pest outbreaks, could even be weeds. And that's really important. And cultural control is the foundation from that. And then we look at nutrition and chemical if required. And really importantly, at the end of the day, is that we need to have early intervention. That, in my experience, always creates fewer problems. So if you're looking at this program and you've got really getting on top of it, it goes along with the old adage that prevention is always better than cure. And with that, I'd like to say thanks very much for you listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, they come in the chat box. But if you want to be able to reach out to me, I'm sure you can through the Amenity Forum. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Mark. And we'll say goodbye to you now. And great use of your mobile phone today. That worked a treat.
Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, quick thinking. Yeah. Great stuff.
Thank you.
So our next presentation is from Ed Lewis. And Ed has some great new tech to share with you today. So hello, Ed. When you're ready, take it away.
Good morning, George, and thanks very much. It's great to be back in this environment. I was very fortunate enough to speak when we had a physical meeting at the Slate in Warwickshire. I think it was around about 18 months ago. And I covered off some of the details of what I'll sort of give you some sort of wave tops of our unmanned aerial precision sprayer, or UAPS as we have referred it to. And I'll then also talk about another project that we're working on, which really touches on some of the points that Rob and Ian have both brought up this morning about capturing the amount of pesticide that you're using, where you're using it, and all that side of things. And that's called Spray Display. And there's a quick sort of voiceover video that will show that. So a quick couple of wave tops on UAPS. So UAPS is our own inbuilt, designed, patented and constructed sort of sprayer, effectively the same sort of characteristics as a Lance sprayer that you might find on a knapsack, except it's suspended and fixed under a drone. So commercial off-the-shelf drone. We have a drone operating company as part of our organization. So we have this drone sprayer that goes underneath it to reach and spray those hard to access places, particularly in the railway. For those of you that perhaps haven't had the opportunity to think about this, Network Rail own 51,000 hectares of land. I can't tell you how many structures there are, buildings and all the rest of it, but if you look out of the window, you will see Buddleia, which is our prime target species, growing on an awful lot of that land. A lot of it is out of reach. We've designed and built the UAPS predominantly for the railway, but increasingly what we're finding now is other structures and other customers that are wanting us to do. So the slide that you can see now, we've got Sherborne Castle in a little bit of a state of disrepair, clearly quite an old structure. And then the one at the bottom, not an angle that you might necessarily recognise it from, but it's St Paul's Cathedral, obviously in central London. Both of those have got Buddleia or other plants that need to be controlled, growing out of the sort of nooks and crannies in those areas. How do you reach those without unsightly or costly scaffolding, ladders, balancing on people's shoulders, cherry pickers, mutes, or any other sort of way that you can do that? So that's how we're using our drone sprayer. I won't go into the rules and regulations about drone spraying, but needless to say, it's very, very complicated. There's an awful lot of red tape. We are one of the only people in the UK that can spray, certainly in the rail environment. There are a couple of other people who are on the boundaries of using similar sprayers or slightly bigger sprayers or seeders away from the general public, but it's a pretty complicated way. What we've then also done is use the same gubbins on a pole where we can't necessarily fly to sort of reach those areas. So next slide, please. There's no sound to this video, but what we have is a DJI M300 drone. Just a quick caveat on the two videos that I'm going to show. We are simply spraying water. So you will note that the people are not wearing approved PPE. And the nozzle on the Lance sprayer that you'll see, clearly we've not calibrated or got into the right dimension and all the rest of it. The Lance itself has a camera on the Lance, so the spray operator has a separate controller to the drone operator, and that's the view that the spray operator can see, clearly identifying the plant species that you're getting after. We are simply spot spraying. So we have a sort of a litre tank at the back of the drone that is pre-filled. It takes about 10 seconds to switch the tanks out. We use multiple tanks whilst we're doing this. We are using a glyphosate product, so we are using Roundup ProVantage in this particular setting. Clearly, we have the GPS from the aircraft recording where we are spraying, and then we've got recording data in the handset. So we're getting accurate usage, as well as actually clearly knowing how much chemical we've put, or mixed chemical we've put in the tank. So from a client's perspective, you can show where you've sprayed, how much you've sprayed, and from a regulatory perspective, we are simply using the least amount of spray because we know that it is effective against the target species that we are after. We are just delivering it in a slightly different method, and therefore, because it is an off-label delivery, you clearly need the chemical manufacturer's permission to be able to use it in this sort of delivery method. So the Lance itself moves up and down, left and right. We are hovering in effect whilst we are delivering that. And as you can see here, this is Longtown Castle in Herefordshire. A far quicker job to actually do this task than the need for scaffolding, ladders, or any of those other areas that I've sort of spoke about working at height. There's a separate controller for the drone pilot, one for the operator, as you can see there. Simply comes back into land, and we would switch over the tank, which we've pre-filled, and then ready to go off for the next task. So next slide, please. So you can, I'm not going to read through the slide there, but you can see a number of the sort of challenges and risks that we have had to go there. But we've achieved a number of UK firsts, which has been fantastic. And those of you that were at the slate would have actually seen the physical equipment that we had there. So next slide, please. So spray display, and there's a voiceover video which will give you some of the sort of the headlines. But effectively, it's an inline flow meter with a built-in GPS recorder to again accurately record all of the data where you are spraying. So next slide, if we could have the video, please.
So this is just a demo example of where we're at with the GPS knapsack sprayer. This is a very much a much bigger unit than it should be in the end result, because rather than cutting into the hoses and ruining the knapsack, the threads were all 3D printed, which doesn't make a great seal. Those things operate at about 80 psi, or can do. So once they've been undone and done up a couple of times, there were some leaks. But the principle was there that a flow meter was put in line. It didn't really impede with the amount of fluid coming out under pressure. And then when the amount of fluid was going through, then data points, or GPS data points, were collected, time and date, latitude and longitude and altitude, and stored on an SD card. and that information can then be taken into this web GUI that was created so that we can compare, on this particular example, just 2 files, but that can be 2 members of staff, or it could be 2 years, same member of staff. So obviously, the ability just to change the colors there, just some very simple, straightforward options. But I think there's a lot of scope to do a lot more with this. And there's also, obviously on a 3D platform like Cesium, for instance, but also just being able to maybe log into your account and have the information stored there. But of course, there are GDPR and server considerations there. But being able to do more than one data set would be advantageous. Obviously, this is just with open source maps as well, so that the zoom level isn't as good as using a Google API. It was just faster to set it up this way. But I think the final system would very much just have a very stripped down system of a small battery system, a very small microprocessor and a Bluetooth connection, and then everything else will be done on the phone, because the operator's going to have a decent GPS location on their phone. The phone can do the data logging, and it could potentially upload in real time as well if required. So the system that was created for this demo was much bigger because it had to carry its own GPS and SD card and all that stuff, whereas a phone wouldn't.
So in summary, really, on certainly with the UAPs, so it's not just railway that we're now using it, supporting English heritage on historic monuments, clearly removing the requirement to work from height. As I said, we've broken through a number of red tape barriers. We're part of a drone spraying working group run by the Chemical Regulatory Division part of HSE and sort of Rob's sort of colleagues. And again, because we've got an understanding of working in the rail space of operatives on the ground, we're not trying to design a piece of kit to then sell. We understand what the actual problems are. Whereas now, so we're actually focusing on more operational and sort of training for our own staff, or how can we get greater exposure and supporting those that are working in this space. So that sort of very much wraps up my presentation. So back to George in the studio, and thanks very much.
That's fantastic, Ed. Thank you. Really, really interesting, certainly to me, who knows very little about the Amenity Forum and all of this fantastic tech that you are working on at the moment. So there is one comment which says, is the GPS knapsack sprayer available? If so, is there a link to it? And I'm sure somebody can respond to that on your behalf, Ed. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are just coming to a close shortly. We have one more presentation for you. The next one is from Karina Urquhart, new CEO at Basis Registration.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karina Urquhart, and I'm the CEO at Basis. I've been the CEO for the past 6 months. And I'm really pleased to be with you virtually to share with you what Basis's priorities are for 2025. So those of you that engage with Basis, either via our professional registers, our schemes, our audits, you'll know that we're quite reliant on paper-based systems and lots of different spreadsheets. So we're really keen to move to a more digital way of working. That will provide an enhanced member experience, but it will also improve our operational efficiency. Now, in order to achieve that, we're investing in a CRM this year that's currently being embedded. And that's so that we've got all of our member data in one place. We can streamline our processes and support engagement with our sectors that is really focused on, for example, amenity or agriculture or pest control. The first phase of rolling out our CRM has focused on looking at an inspections app that we use for store audits. So we do store audits and amenity. And what that means is that we have real-time data capture, enhanced accuracy, and quicker turnaround time for audit outcomes. This app was actually developed and started to be rolled out in February. So that's kind of properly embedded in business processes now. An app that's currently under development and is at the stage of trialing is for CPD. So it basically allows our members to record points and track their CPD activities. This app will be available by September. And the next phase of the CRM development is looking at our exams and training. So providing that function, but in a more automated digital way. So the second priority for 2025 is new appointments to the BASIS Board of Trustees. So earlier this year, 7 positions became vacant, which is a significant amount. So we went through an open recruitment process for most of the positions. Some of them, according to our articles of association, mean that we have particular processes to follow. So, for example, we were looking for a nominated member from the Amenity Forum. So we have Ian Graham, the chair of your Amenity Forum, now sitting on the BASIS Board of Trustees. We also have Tom Arnold, who is CEO at Topgrass, and Ruth Mann, who is head of integrated crop technologies at Agri. What that means is that the interests around the table on the BASIS board are a lot more diversified. Historically, we've probably had a weighting towards agriculture, but now I'm really pleased to say that we have got more of a balanced representation of interests around the table. The 7 new appointments to the board were accepted at our AGM on the 22nd of May. The third priority for 2025 is to gain a deeper understanding of the sectors that we serve, and that's what my next slide will focus on. So we're undertaking currently a comprehensive review of the existing provision of amenity schemes offered by BASIS. We're going to be looking at uptake of those various schemes, whether that's professional registers, audits, and we'll be looking at the strengths and weaknesses of our existing framework. The whole idea really is to identify potential improvements and new opportunities to support the amenity sector. A key part of the process has been engaging with stakeholders to ensure that we have your views from the amenity sector. This work started a couple of months ago, and it will conclude towards the end of the summer, where we'll come up with a plan on how BASIS will support amenity into the future. I'll actually be speaking at the Amenity Forum annual conference in October, and I'll be happy to share the outcomes of this review at that get-together. So the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about was policy related. So the National Action Plan promotes sustainable use of plant protection products, and it emphasises the need for integrated management plans in weed, pest and disease control. And what I'd like to talk to you about is how BASIS can support you in meeting the objectives of the National Action Plan. So you might be aware, but we have a flexible e-learning platform called BASIS Classroom. And we've recently developed some courses in a modular fashion that sit under the umbrella of the principles of sustainable amenity management. Now, what these are is they're relatively short online courses that provide you with an insight into policy in the amenity sector, biodiversity for environmental management, managing water and air pollution, and planning integrated approaches in amenity situations. Basically, with the idea behind these courses is they are open to absolutely everyone, whether you are an early career new entrant to the sector or whether you're a seasoned professional. Basically, it's an entry-level course that is accessible and designed for you to access in your own time, in a very flexible way. So I would encourage you to visit the BASIS website to get access to these courses. There are discounts available if you are a member of different BASIS registers, and there is more information on our website. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Karina. And we've come to a close. That is all the presentations that we have for you today. So a big thanks from me and the Purple Monster team. And now over to Ian to finally close the meeting.
Thanks, George. So it just remains for me to say thank you to a few people, notably Kate, who has been working as hard as she always does to deliver, and she's been a big part of making today what it has been. The team here have been fantastic with us. I think we'll probably work with them again. And if ever you've got a need for this kind of thing, I'd certainly encourage you to speak to George and the team. I'd like to thank everyone who's taken the time to spend a few hours with us today. It's that membership, it's that engagement that's really important to us. I'd also like to thank the people who've contributed. I think we've had some fantastic presentations, and I'm certainly keen to follow up on the questions that we're seeing coming in. There have been lots of them, so rest assured we will work our way through those and we'll make sure that we come back to each of you. So once again, thanks to everyone involved, and thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you again soon, I hope.
Thanks very much. And I think this slide, if we can just make this final slide big on the screen, then everybody can see those dates for future reference this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd encourage you to come to the conference. It's going to be slightly different this year. You'll probably notice a few things that have been a little different this year. We've updated our forum branding, which I think looks very smart. The conference is going to be a slightly different format with some networking opportunities, dinner the night before. So come and join us, make it a learning event, and the more of us that are there, the better it will be. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.